Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Bridging the Gap. I am Prophetess Latorsha, and I am just so excited to be here with you again with Bridging the Gap. It has been such an amazing time. And as I'm looking back over, when I first started to now, I am just super excited about where God is about to take me because He is really rearranging and causing me to, relook at some things that I'm doing for Bridging the Gap. So I am super excited. I can't wait to share it with you all on what the Lord has placed on my heart to do in the direction for Bridging the Gap. When we are talking about Bridging the Gap, we have to make sure that we are really allowing a place for people to be able to see how can I live this thing called life and still be able to walk with God and still be able to be a Christian, and how do I maneuver? And I think a lot of people are having a hard time with that. And today, I was, of course, I tussle back and forth, especially when I don't have a guest with me. The Lord didn't lay anyone on my heart this week to actually be a guest, and so I tussle with, okay, God. Should I go on? Should I not go on? What do you want me to do? But I didn't do my live today, and the Lord was telling me, Latorsha, use this time to talk about what you was going to talk about in your live. And of course, it's going to be a little more in depth than what it was. But, this morning when I went into my prayer room, I found myself laying prostrate on the floor. And I was crying out to God about, some things that I am dealing with, some things that I've been really wrestling with, in this season. And as I was laying there as I was crying out to Him, when I finally decided, I looked up and the Lord was like, look up. And when I looked up, I have a plaque on my wall that says, be still and know. And, many of us have already talked about this. Many of us, I'm trying to make sure I invite all the people that's coming in. The Lord has, we've been talking about, especially in church, be still and know. But one of the things that the Lord was showing me was, in able to be still and know, you have to take time to really, know who God is. You have to know who He is, and you have to know who you are in Him. And when I looked up and I saw that, and it said, "Be still and know, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am your provider. Be still and know that I am your way maker. Be still and know that I'm going to make a way out of no way. Be still and know that I am the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. Be still and know that who I am, know my name, get to know me, get to understand who I am. And the more that you understand who I am, the more you can understand who you are. And I think many of us as Christians, we find it hard for us to really move in the things of God because we really don't know who we are. We really don't know who God is calling us to be in this season. We really don't know the things that God has laid upon, for us, because we haven't studied the Word of God. We haven't allowed ourselves to meditate on His Word day and night. We don't allow ourselves because life is life. And so we get up, and if we don't take time and be disciplined enough to sit down and say, okay, God, I'm going to spend this time with you. I'm going to allow myself to sit in this place with you. The day is over, and before we know it, we're looking around wondering, where did the time go? Did I even get any time with God? And so today, even as I was laying there was such a peace that hit my life. And, and I told you guys last week or on the live, I don't remember when I said it, but the Lord was telling me, get out of the weeds and get on the wall. And when I was talking with my therapist and I was telling her, I said, I realized that I had allowed so much stuff to get me caught up, to get me in a place where I was struggling. I was trying to make sure I checked all the blocks. I was trying to make sure that, God, you sent me here for such a time as this. How do I maneuver? How do I do the things that you're calling me to do? And one of the things that, I've noticed that I was so into the weeds. And we all know what's in the weeds. You got snakes in the weeds. You got bugs in the weeds. You got stuff in the weeds. It's so much when you are in the weeds. Bugs, ants, spiders, snakes are all in the weeds. And if you allow yourself to stay in the weeds, then you're going to always have a distraction. You're going to always have something that's keeping you from stepping fully in what God is calling you to step in. So today, beloved, I want us to look at, and today, we're bridging the gap. How do we bridge the gap between where we are and where God is calling us? How do we bridge the gap between the things of God and the things of this world? How do we bridge the gap between what I'm destined for? Like, I see myself here, and here I'm still struggling. Here I'm still having a hard time. Here I really don't understand, but I know God is calling me to this. I know my purpose is this. I know that God has placed me in another place, in another level in Him. How do I get there? But yet, God, you're telling me to be still and know. How do I be still when you're telling me to move forward? How do I be still when you're telling me to go higher? How do I be still when you're telling me that, you're calling me for another level in you? How do I be still? But see, being still does not mean stop. Being still does not mean not to pursue the things of God. Being still does not mean that you just say, okay, well, I'm going to be still. I'm going to rest in God. Be still means that I am going to pursue what God has for me. I'm going to pursue getting into His presence. I'm going to pursue to hear His voice. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stay stuck. I'm not going to fall back. I'm going to pursue in His presence. I'm going to move in His presence. I'm going to seek the things of God. And, as you sit around and you think, the world, when the world tell you, when your mom used to say, I need you to sit down and be still. You're doing too much moving. Just sit down somewhere and be still. And we saw that as a negative thing, meaning, oh man, we're being punished. But 9 times out of 10, when you were sitting down and you was being still, what happened? You found yourself now in a place of thinking, in a place of going over, what you did in your head or the games you want to play with your friends. You're going over the things that, have, and even probably thinking about, why did my mom set me down? What did I do wrong that my mom had to set me down? But yet you are thinking on the things that while you are in that still place. Where you can't rip and run, why you can't run through the house, you can't go outside and play with your friends. Why? Because your mom said, be still. Sit down somewhere and be still because you're doing too much. But in that sitting down and being still, you are thinking, you are pondering, you are picturing yourself outside. And see, as we have become older in age, we have lost our imagination. We have lost the ability to see ourselves in a place, to see ourselves in a certain thing, to see ourselves in moving. And I don't know about you, but there was a game that we used to play as children because we was poor. And so we would sit on the front porch, and when a car passed by, we would say, that's my car. That's going to be my car. Or when we were walking somewhere, we would say, oh, that's my house. That's going to be my house because I'm going to live here when I grow up. I'm going to live here when I get to a certain age. But yet we could see ourselves there. We could see ourselves in that car. We can see ourselves being a movie star. We can see ourselves doing all these things. But then as life starts and we have to get a job and we have to pay bills and we have to raise a family and we have to be a wife to our husbands and our husbands have to be a husband to the wives, we take away that imagination. We take away that ability to see ourselves in a greater place, in a better place. And in that's part of being still. God, I'm going to ponder and picture your word in my life. If you say that I am more than a conqueror, then I need to be still and see myself as being more than a conqueror. I need to sit down and see myself as being what you have called me to be. And one of the things, and then when I was sitting there and I was looking at just laying there prostrate before the Lord, and I was looking at the plaque on my wall, and the be still, I understood, but then he was like, I need you to look deeper at no. And I'm looking at no, and I'm looking, and the Lord said, you can't have no without now. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. Hebrews 11:1. And when I say that floored me, I had to stop for a moment and say, oh my God. And he kept saying it in my spirit. You cannot have no without now. KNOW. You cannot have no without now. In other words, you have to have faith. You're gonna have to have faith to even know who I am, so that you can be still and trusted my word. You have to have faith now to be able to see how I'm even moving in the still place that I told you. Moses, God told Moses, be still and tell the people to, stop crying out to me, and tell the people to see themselves on the other side. See, you have to enable to know that you're going to get to the other side. You have to have now faith. You have to be able to say that I believe that the God who brought us out of Israel, out of Egypt, is going to take us across this. I know the God that delivered us, the God that sent the plagues to Egypt, the God that allowed us to now be in the place where we have the Red Sea in front of us and Pharaoh's army behind us. See, many times we want to believe that God is going to make it all pretty and perfect, that we're not going to have anything that we're going to be fighting with or fighting against. But if I'm honest with you, your fight is what's going to build you in what God is calling you. The struggles that you endure is going to get you well equipped to be able to do the things that God is calling you. So if you don't know that you have to walk in now, then you're going to always not have the faith that you need to believe God to make a way out of no way. See, the Bible, the word says that if you pray and you believe, you shall receive. But are we believing in what we're praying? Or are we going before the Lord and we have all these things that we're saying, all these words, that we have, but are we really going before him and really trusting and really believing in what God is calling us to do? And so, there's so much that we have talked about in Bridging the Gap. And each time it goes back to who God is. It goes back to knowing who God is. It goes back to you knowing who you are in God. And so, as I'm just in awe, honestly, of what God is doing in my life. It seems that even every time that I'm moving in God, that I'm trusting him, every time that I am believing in what he said, but it seemed like the adversities, the struggles, the distraction come harder and try to keep me so in a place where I'm so focused on the distraction that I've allowed my gaze to fall from who God is. And he has to give us a wake-up call. And so when I was laying there this morning and looking up at the plaque on the wall, he said, "Enable to know." You cannot spell no without now. You cannot know without now. Now faith. And with me, how do we trust God if we don't have faith that God is a provider? How do we trust God when we don't understand who he is? How do we believe that he's going to make a way, that he's our lily of the valley, that he is the Lion of Judah, if we don't know and we don't believe in who God is? And our struggles in church is because of our struggles within ourselves. How are you doing, Miss Wanda? Our struggle is within ourselves. We are struggling with how God is going to show up, because we have that doubt. We have that, I expect him to show up at this time, and God didn't show up for me when I thought he was going to show up for me. So is God really going to do what God said he's going to do? And then I'm looking around and I see everybody in the church acting up, and I see everybody that's broken, and I see so much going on. God, are you really going to show up and show out for me? God, are you really going to make a way where there seems to be no way? God, am I going to continue to go through this struggle? Am I going to continue to go through these pains that I'm having in my life? Am I going to continue to have to fight and struggle and to try to get through? But when we are able to be still and really meditate on who God is, be still and really take a moment to say, God, I remember when I had nothing, but yet I was not in lack. I remember when my bank account, when I was getting paid every other month, because my bank account was so in the negative, that yet I always ate. I always had gas. I always had the things that I needed. I was never in a lack. Even though my sight, even though what I looked at in the natural showed me that I had nothing, that there was nothing there for me to even get anything from, but yet you made a way. But yet every time I opened my cabinet doors, there was food in the cabinet. But every time I got in the car, and even though it looked like it was close to eat, I was able to drive around and do stuff as if the hand of the gas never moved. But we have to remember, have you forgotten what God has done? And see, in us being still and knowing who God is, we're able to sit down and think about the things that God has done. Think about the goodness of God. See, when I look back over my life and I saw where God has brought me from, when I look back over my life and I see that I was supposed to lose my mind, when I look back over my life and I see that I wasn't supposed to be in the place that I am now, it may not be where I think I should be, but God has provided. I have a roof over my head. I have food in my cabinets. I have gas in my car. But there was a time where I did not have that, but yet God still showed up and was God, even when I did not know him to be my God. Come on, let's be real. Even when I really didn't recognize him as being my God, that I was saved and I said yes to him, but yet I was still unsure. I was still trying to learn what it is to be a Christian, because no one came alongside of me. And many times I've said it, I've been unchurched, but yet God showed up and showed out. See, there are so many stories that I could tell you about how God protected me and Kiana, and she was in my belly, and I was driving, and I was driving from Maryland to New York to see Kiana's father. And as I'm driving, we get hit with this blizzard, and I could not see in front of me. I didn't know where the road was. I was too afraid to stop because I didn't know if the person behind me could see me, if there was another car coming. And I didn't panic But I was a little afraid because I could not see anything. And all of a sudden, these headlights, these tail lights appeared before me. Listen, beloved, this is what I want you to understand with being still and knowing who he is. See, many times in the knowing, you have to go back to what he did with you before. Go back and remind yourself of how he helped you. And so when these tail lights got in front of me, I positioned myself directly behind the car. And I said, God, if you could just get me through. And I'm riding, and I stayed behind the taillights. But when the snow lifted, when the blizzard died down, there was not a physical car in front of me. But the following the lights kept me from running off the road, kept me from hitting another car. And I stayed directly behind a set of lights. And as I said, when the storm lifted, there was no car there. You can't tell me that wasn't God. But see, beloved, let me tell you something. He knew me before I knew him. I don't even think at that time, I probably have been saved maybe 6 months. Not really going to church, not really knowing God, because I PCS from one location and was stationed in another. And I was going back to the old location to see Kiana's father. But yet, I didn't know. I wasn't praying. I wasn't fasting. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't crying out to God. But yet, he understood that he had to come see about his baby. He had to come see about his child. He had to come see about his beloved and make sure that I was able to get through that storm so that I could be here today to tell you that God is still a way maker, that God will be the light in the storm, that he will lead you and guide you. And so when he was saying, be still and know how he showed up for you. So even if you have to sit down and write down what God has done for you in this year, let's say this year. But if you cannot come up with anything, I want you to look back over your life and see, where did God bring me from? While I was in the club, while I was, hopping from bed to bed, doing the things that I should not have been doing, but yet God protected me. He covered me. He made a way even when I didn't know him, because he knew me. And the word says, I knew you before you was formed in your mother's belly. So, I came on here today, as the year is coming to an end. But God is still the same. But I want us to move in this year, going into the next year, understanding that God has hand selected each and every one of us, that he has called us. He knew the purpose that we had on our lives. He knew the things that we were supposed to do. He knew that that we was going to be in the place that we are. Many times a lot of Christians are in a place where they're saying, I should be further along. I should know more word by now. I should know more studying by now. I should be able to recite more scriptures by now. But God knows where you are. You're right where he wants you to be. Yes, can we all study more? Yes. Can we all read more? Yes. Can we all, but don't beat yourself up that you're not where you think you are to be. Be still and know. Have faith that God, you have called me for such a time as this. You have called me into this place of stepping into this place. What is your this place? When I go back and I look over the each of the Bridging the Gaps that I've done, or if I go back and I look at a snippet of something that popped up in the memory, or a flyer that comes up, and I just think about, God, it was you that did it. I never planned on doing Bridging the Gap. wasn't something that I sat down and say, oh, I'm really going to, oh yeah, it'd be nice for me to do a podcast and call it Bridging the Gap. But God is more than just a podcast. I believe that this is more than just a podcast. Why do I say that? Because so many people have been healed. So many people have been set free. So many people have turned away from the things that they was doing and in this place. And I know this is not the normal Bridging the Gap. But this is a time that God is saying, be still and know. Take a moment as the year is coming to an end to be still enough to meditate and think about the things that I've done for you, what I am calling you to, what I'm calling you out of, what I'm drawing you towards. You know, be still and position yourself before me. Be still and cry out to me. Be still and understand that I am working on your behalf. Oh, listen, beloved, I have no words. When I said I tussled today with whether or not to even show up. But I understand that it's bigger than me. Someone needed to know today that they have to be still and know that He is God. What does that look like? What does that mean? You know, so many times we're looking at other people's lives, and especially with social media. With social media, you would think people have the best life and they have the best marriage and they have the best things going on, when it took them maybe 100 times to take a picture that was perfect for one social media post. But we are comparing ourselves to filters. We're comparing ourselves to what's not real. We're comparing ourselves to what people are portraying before us. And so we're looking over, excuse me, and we see that the people's grass looks so much greener than ours. And God, I just want to be in that grass. I want to be able to walk around in that grass. Excuse me. I want to be able to, why can't my marriage look like that? Why can't my children look like that? Why can't my house look like that? Why can't the things that I'm asking God for look like that? But many times we step over into that grass and we get cut. Why? Because it's not real. It's plastic. It's fake. And so we have lost time looking at other people, trying to compare ourselves to other people. How you doing, Mr. Anthony? But God is telling us, be still. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and take a moment and look at your life and look at what I have done. Be grateful and thankful in the things that I have done for you. Be grateful for how I'm opening doors. Be grateful for how I'm making a way. Be grateful. And you know, many times we have to go back to when we was growing up in life, because it's still the same way. You know, just like I said earlier, our parents would tell us, be still, sit down somewhere and be still because you're doing too much. Well, when I saw that in Psalms 46:10, where the Lord said, be still and know that I am God, that means sit down somewhere, but don't stop moving. You have to take a moment, because in the times that we sit down, in the times that we stop moving, in the times that we allow God to really allow us to now meditate on Him, meditate on the things that He's done. You know, because when our parents told us to sit down somewhere and be still, we didn't have anything else to do but our imagination. Oh, this is what I'm going to do when I get off the couch. This is what I'm going to do when I get back outside. This is what I'm going to do when I go back to my room. I'm going to grab my coloring book and I'm going to color that picture. You know, we're thinking about and pondering the things that we're going to do when we get out of this place of being still. And in that stillness, God is going to remind you of who you are. He's going to remind you of who He's called you to be. How are you doing, Apostle Sharon? He's going to remind you. And so if you understand, you know, you cannot have a no. K-N-O-W, without a noun. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for. See, to spell no, you have to have now, because if not, then you just have K. Come on. You have to be able to have now faith to be able to know who God is in your life. You got to have faith to be able to believe that he is your provider, that he is going to make a way, that he's going to show up and show out. But if you don't have now faith, you're going to always wonder if God is who God say he is. Is he going to show up for you? Is he going to make a way for you? But when you be still long enough to understand that in this season, God is calling us to recalibrate, to reassess, to realign ourselves with him, because we have allowed the world to get us out of alignment. We have allowed the bumps in the road to throw off our alignment. We have allowed the things that we have gone through to allow us to keep our eyes off of God. You're going to have to recalibrate. You're going to have to reassess. You're going to have to realign yourself with the word of God. God, while I'm being still, show me who I am. Show me how you see me. Show me where you want me to go. God, you're going to have to be like Moses. I'm not going to go if you're not going with me. God, I'm not moving from this place if you do not go with me. If your anointing does not go with me, if your glory does not go with me, I will not move from this place. And we see, in being still, you're able to now understand what God, the instructions that God has given you. And you're going to understand that the only reason I got to the place that I am now, the only reason that I've overcome the things that I've overcome, I understand that the only reason that I'm in the place that I'm in is because, God, you pulled me out of a mess. You pulled me out of tragedy. You pulled me out of my own self. You have healed me from the inside out. So now I'm able to see, but we have to make sure that we do adjustments. You know, could you imagine that you are in your outfit that your mom gave you as a toddler, and now as a grown man and a grown woman, you're still trying to put that same outfit on? When you was 5 years old, you're still trying to put that same outfit on now that you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 plus. But how crazy is that? That we are trying to still put on the things that we had when we was babes and when we was young adults and when we was in our 20s and 30s. But God is calling us to another place. And just like we're growing naturally, we are growing spiritually. So we're not going to be able to do the same things. We're not going to be able to talk it the same way. We're not going to be able to move in that same way, because he's calling us to go into a higher level of him. Be still and know. Be still and know. That was such a recharge for me this morning, that when I laid there on the floor and I looked up at that banner on my wall, that plaque on my wall that said, be still and know. And to have the Lord break it down so to me, the same way that I'm breaking it down to you, that if you don't have now, you would never have no. If you don't have now faith, you would never have a no. You would never know who he is. You would never know who you are. You would never know if you're going to achieve. You would never know what your purpose is. Why? Because I don't have faith enough to believe that, God, you have provided for me. I don't have faith enough to believe. And because I don't have that faith, I don't know who you are. I know what they say. I know what everybody is telling me. And there's going to be a season that your faith had to come from somewhere else. It may have been what the words that the pastor was preaching, and the faith of that pastor as she told you the story of how God provided for her, how God made a way for him, how God did this for them. You know, we stood on that faith for a season, and we came to God. But it's time for us to have a knowing of who he is for ourselves. Because if you truly knew him, if you truly have a know a knowing of him, then you're not going to walk around worried. You're not going to wonder how your ends are going to meet. You're not going to walk around in anxiety. You're not going to walk around anxious. Why? Because I know him. He's never failed me. He's never walked away from me. Even when I walked away from him, he never walked away from me. He never changed who he is to me. But we have to understand that there's going to be seasons where he's going to be Jehovah Jireh, your provider. But then it's going to be a season that he's going to be your healer. It's going to be a season that he's going to be your way maker. It's going to be a season that he's going to be your banner. It's going to be a season that he's going to be your all-knowing. So each of us are going to walk in a season, but you have to know that he's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. And what he's done for Sister Fruit Loop, Brother Cornflake, guess what? He can do it for you. He will be there for you. He will show up and show out for you. He's no respecter of person. But see, if you don't know who he is, if you don't know how to get into his word and call out on the name that he has given you, if you don't know how to call him Abba, your father, if you don't know how to call him Jehovah Jireh, if you don't know how to call him Jehovah Tiskanu, if you don't know how to call him by his name, if you don't know how to get into the word, what does the word say? Be still and know. Be still and know. Ponder, picture, and pray. Take time to get into his word. God, what are you showing me about me? What do you want me to get from this word? As many times as I've walked into my prayer room, as many times as I've looked and saw, be still and know, as many times as I heard people say it in church, as many times as I have heard people say it on podcast and on preaching, today, allowing God and listening to God tell me and allowing the Holy Spirit to reveal to me what it means to know and now. When I say it was mind-blowing, but it was also life-changing. Why? Because I realized that I have to have faith to know who God is. I have to move in a different level of faith. If I'm asking for a deeper level of him, then there has to be a deeper level of faith that I'm stepping in that's going to cause me to have a deeper level of knowing, because I know that he is a rewarder of him that diligently seek him. I know that I have to seek, ask, and knock so that he can give me the things that I'm asking and seeking and knocking for. What are you seeking God for? What are you taking a moment to be still, to meditate on what he's done for you? What if I wouldn't have followed those lights that was before me in the storm that allowed me to stay on the road? What if I said, oh, I'm not going to follow that? Even when I didn't know who God was. But I had enough sense to know that if the car is in front of me, then there's a possibility that they can see what I can't see. See, the lights before me led me to a place where I could see, and that's how God is. He is the way. So when you follow him, he's going to always allow you to make it out of the storm. He's going to always allow you to see what you could not see before. He's going to always allow you to be able to now understand who he is. Because I needed him for this in this season. So, beloved, listen, God is doing a new thing in this season. There is a shift that's happening. Oh my God, there is a shift that's happening. And so I want you to be still. Take a moment. Think about what God has done for you. Think about how he's made a way. Think about how he's brought you out. The things that he's healed you from. The things that he's delivered you from. The things that he has made work out that you thought was never going to work out. And know that he's the same God. He's the same God that stood with Moses on Mount Sinai. He's the same God that gave Moses the 10 commandments. He's the same God that guided the rock when David released it in the sling to hit Goliath. He's the same God that steeled the hand of Abraham so that he wouldn't kill Isaac. He's the same God that parted the Red Sea. He's the same God that rose Lazarus in the grave. He's the same God that healed the woman with the issue of blood. He's the same God that went in and called the 12-year-old little girl to get up when she was dead. He's the same God. And see, we have the same anointing residing on the inside of us. The same Spirit, Holy Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead, resides on the inside of us. So why do we feel that we can't do it? Why do we believe that we're not good enough? Why do we believe that it's never going to happen? You know, Apostle Bill was preaching. He said, we have to dream big. And I had to sit down and said, you're so right. We have to dream bigger than what we see right now. We're allowing our sight to keep us stuck. We're allowing our sight to keep us stagnated. We're allowing our sight to make us look like we're overwhelmed. We're allowing our sight to cause us to believe that we are going to always be in this place. But when we understand that we walk by faith, not by sight, when we understand that it's now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. What are you hoping for in this season? What are you seeking God for in this season? What are you dreaming big in this season? You know, I told a young lady, I said, you know what? I'm about to buy a villa in Italy that has a huge garden, that when it's time for me to have my conference, I'm going to have it in my garden. I'm going to have it at my home because it's going to be big enough and it's going to be a place that's beautiful enough for the women to get together so we can have tea parties, so we can come together and do Bible studies. Yes, I'm going to buy a villa in Italy. Now, if I look at my bank account, I'm never going to get this house in Italy. If I look at my job situation, I'm never going to get this house in Italy. If I'm looking at the customers and the clients that I have right now, I'm never going to receive that. But that's my sight. My faith is saying that God will do exceedingly and abundantly above all I can ask or think. See, I'm not asking for this house just so I can have a place to try to throw it in people's face. God, I'm asking for this house and this garden and this beautiful home. Why? So that I can bring other women in so they can be healed, delivered, and set free. So I can bring women in to be equipped and restored. So I can bring women in to get to another level of who you're calling them to be. See, I'm not doing it because I want to be a show off. God, you've called me to the women. You've called me to step into this place. So I'm believing and I'm dreaming big. Why? Because I'm being still. And I'm looking at how you provided for me. I'm looking at how God has provided for me. But since I've got removed from my job, I've never had a moment of lack. A moment of not doing what I want to do. A moment of not achieving what I wanted to achieve. Going back and forth between America and Europe and not betting my eyes when it's time for me to purchase the plane ticket. Why? Because God is making a way. Because he has called me and appointed me for such a time as this. So whatever it is, I want you to dream big. I want you to be still and know that God has called you to greater. Be still and know that he has a purpose for you. Be still and know that he is God. God, I can't do it on my own. I can't make it. I can't pay for it. I can't achieve it. But God, you can give me favor that will supersede what money can pay for. That someone will come in and bless me with this home, this villa in Italy. That someone will walk up and bless me with a plane to be able to drive back and forth. Come on, I'm dreaming big. I will not step out of 2025 into 2026 holding on to small dreams. Oh God, if you can just give me 5 clients. Oh God, if you can just, okay, give me 5 clients, but allow them to pay the money that will supersede if I had 100 clients. See, we have to dream big. We have to believe that if God is calling us to it, he's going to bring us through it. If, I tell people, if it's God's will, then it's his bill. He's going to make sure that the provisions are there for you to do and accomplish the things that he is calling you to accomplish. So, beloved, as I am about to sign out for tonight, for Bridging the Gap, and we will have Bridging the Gap one more time before the end of the year. So I want you all to send me what you want your last year's topic to be about. Is there something that you're still questioning? Is it something that we've talked about on Bridging the Gap this year that you want a little more depth about? You want to go a little more deeper into? Then send me a private message, put it in the chat, whatever you do, because we are in this together. And we are going to close 2025 Bridging the Gap with a bang. This is my 5th year of doing Bridging the Gap. And I'm about to step into my 6th year. But God, the late night getting up doing Bridging the Gap, the trying to do it from one place to another place, readjusting from being in America to being in Europe, but God. So beloved, today I just want you to be still and know. KNOW. But know that you cannot have a no without a now. So now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. So when you have that now faith, you will always have that no, because you will always know that he will show up, that God will be your provider, that he will open doors. And so you all have an amazing night. I will see you back here next Thursday. I'm thinking may have 2 guests next week because I want us to close out on an amazing note for Bridging the Gap. So you all, as I say every Thursday, if you need me, I'm just a call away. I'm just a text away. And for everyone who have reached out to me when my husband went back to Romania, thank you so much. Thank you for being there. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for how you text me and called me, because it was rough. It was a rough couple of days, but God. And guess what? In a couple of days, he's going to be back here. So God is definitely making a way that if he called me for this assignment, he's given me a way to be able to endure what he's calling me in this season. So you all, I love you all. Have an amazing night. Bye-bye.